The Wranglin' Panglin presents a Canonn historical simulation project. Do you have a hankering for the flight surfaces of the ancient past? Anyone with the historical recreation software IL-2 Battle of Stalingrad are invited to join the Verity Old Earth Flight Squadron. For more information, contact Pangolin Wranglin to fly the unfriendly skies of one of Earth's greatest conflicts. Saturday, it's fight night. Join the Rumble in Sansu at the Sansu Scientific Installation orbiting 4C for a fighters-only fight night. Consensual PvP at its finest. 1900 Galactic Standard Time, be there or be somewhere else. Brought to you by the Canonn Adrenal Sciences Division and sponsored by the Canonn Research Institute. Biscuits, booze, and blood. It's fight night. This is Canonn Faction News, recorded live from the tinfoil lined box in Verity.
A good relative time part to you all. I'm Cmdr Larzok, and welcome to our discussion panel, where we take some time with notable figures from around the scientific community to jabber and jaw about our current events around the galaxy. With me today are Cmdrs Delmonte and Starbeaver from the Canonn Council. And while we had wanted to have a member of the R&D team with us tonight, we've just received word that the labs have gone on full lockdown due to a scavenger getting loose from a test chamber. Hopefully they'll get that thing sedated and squared away before we finish. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining me this evening.
Good evening, Commanders.
Thank you for having us.
All right. Let's get right into the current business of the day then. Now, as I've heard, the Canonn's public codex has been getting a rework and is going to be launching this evening that we're recording. It might not be the same evening you hear this discussion panel, but I wanted to get a little bit from you guys on that, if you'd like to start, Del.
The current site is down where you could have got your information from, and it's being transferred to new servers, and software upgrades are incoming. And of course, this will give much better access to the Canonn Codex, which is a tool for everybody to use, not just the Canonn, but people outside of the Canonn as well, where they can look for history of events, look for the history of the Thargoids, the unknown probes, even the brain trees feature on there.
Quite a lot of hard work and dedication has gone into particularly the codex over the last 4.5 to 5 months now. And as Commander Del says, it's for everybody, and it's a matter of accessibility, even for newer pilots out there who have been confronted with this Thargoid situation, and they don't know where to start. And we're trying to give them a tool for survivability as well as study.
Well, that's a good point, actually. A lot of new pilots simply don't know where to start with some of these things. And of course, if you've not been kicking around the galaxy for a while, you might not have access yet to go and get some corrosive resistant racks. There are currently, I believe, Commander Starbeaver, you were telling me earlier, we've got system problems around Sirius. People deliberately trying to block access to Professor Palin.
Yeah, there's a blockade of sorts going on in the system from a number of commanders who are, well, I don't know what their motives are, but one of the outcomes will be that access to Professor Palin would be blocked. It's
is this a Procyon system they're trying to shut down?
I believe they're trying to force Sirius out of the Procyon system,
which would present a real problem for some commanders. So Canonn might be looking into the background of that and see whether there's something we can do to help avoid this lockdown situation.
Well, that would be incredibly beneficial, as you've mentioned. This is a very poorly timed and ill-conceived campaign on the part of the faction in question, and I don't think things will go well for them once the galaxy at large gets a hold of what they're actually trying to do.
No, certainly. I mean, when Canonn rallies together to achieve a common goal, such as the creation of the Gnosis vessel that's currently still in the situation around Verati, over 12,000 commanders hailed our call, yet we only have around 2,000 commanders officially on our book. So with these kinds of people and this kind of support, it makes for an awesome force within the galaxy.
I would not want to be on the opposing side of the Canonn hordes, that's for sure.
I mean, a big part of what the Canonn is as well is free and independence. We don't ask people to do this. We don't give instructions. We do do have standing orders that are available for anybody that wishes to take part in science or wishes to take part in the exploration or testing that we do. But it's something we've always stressed. You know, we're not here to dictate what pilots can or cannot do. All we ask is that you come together under the common goal of science.
That is a very laudable goal, and I for one, am particularly happy for it. You guys let me babble at people.
Babbling is what we can do with science. It does help if you've got a little bit of whiskey to one side and biscuits to the other side. It stops the babbling for a little while you chomp on a biscuit and have a think.
Or pork pies.
Oh, pork pies, they're becoming quite popular recently. I'm not quite sure why.
It's that Governor Powell, isn't it?
Yeah, he seems to have a proper pork pie fetish at the moment. Don't know why, though. I think he's spent a little bit too long in the Colonia system. He is due to return soon from Colonia and spend a bit more time in the bubble. I think rehabilitation might be the first step.
Rubber rooms on standby.
We could have some built on the Gnosis, I suppose.
Oh, right. Well, that's good. Nothing wrong with a little rubber room time. Everybody needs to have a good bounce.
Oh, certainly. I mean, my ball pool at the back of my Anaconda, you know, I wouldn't be without my ball pool at all. It's very much needed. I do know what Mr. Starbeaver has at the back of his asp, but I'm not prepared to say that on it.
Yeah, best not. I might get the feds on me.
All right. So aside from all that, is there anything in particular that can be found on the Codex that can't be found anywhere else?
I think a lot of the information on the Codex is pulled from several different sources. It's just put together in an easy findable location. You know, we don't want to claim credit for everything. I know the R&D guys do an awful lot of work, and Commander Timsk, you know, he's probably in for a very late night tonight while he ports this system over to a new system for easy access. I mean, Star has been organising a lot of the department heads, or boffins as we've been calling them. Do you want to update us on where the boffins are, Starbeaver?
Yes, I certainly can. Well, with the Codex, the council, we determined that there was several areas that needed to be covered. I'll just pull up my notes here, because I have a whole bunch of notes with the departments. But we decided that at the moment, there would be 4 principal departments, each represented by a boffin. These boffins can be approached on our communications network, or also via our Galnet site. And the departments are Archaeology and History, which is headed by Commander Michael Artram. We have Xenobiology and Geology, which is headed by Commander Pam Piper. Barnacle Whisperer, as he is known within the canon. Xenotechnology is headed by our very well prepared Dr. Strange. And we also have Cartographics and Exploration, which is covered by Commander Keybook, who's also very up to date with his information there. And the whole purpose of the Codex is to pull various different sources together into a easy to digest format, so it doesn't bamboozle the new commander or get too much information confused. Because as people are aware, there are so many pieces of information out there. It just all needed pulling together into the right place. And as Commander Delmonte says, there's work on there which has been pulled from other places, but you know, those works have been cited with their sources and the people who put that forward.
Yeah, I'm just looking in some of the background now of this system. You know, I happen to have early access, and you know, it's not just about the information we've got within the Codex as well. The whole site has got a lot of information, and it's all being displayed in a very user-friendly format on a much slicker system than what we've been previously used to. Certainly a big upgrade for the computers.
Well, that is awesome to hear. I'm very glad that site is getting an update. It has needed a bit of spit and polish for a while, and
it's worth telling new commanders as well who are signing into the site that it is going to change our process to say the word accept people into the canon, but you know, anybody is easily accepted, but to get registered within the canon, as the current system stands, you have to wait for somebody to verify your log. The new system will actually verify your log by pinging a message back to your own server, and once this is confirmed, that's it. You'll be verified on the site automatically. We won't need to do that level of manual intervention.
Well, that's good. You know, a little automation is always handy, as long as it doesn't go full-blown AI on us.
Certainly. I mean, we've got Commanders Chris Ox and Commander who can't actually be named because he's incognito at the moment. They both work very hard in the background accepting new pilots onto the system and logging their details. I think they'll be probably welcome of the break.
Well, anything that allows a little bit more science to get done and less hard coding is always a good thing. Now, so that about covers the Codex, I would guess, unless you guys have anything more you'd like to add.
Star, you got anything?
There will be, in the future, In fact, I think I'll just put it out here now. With the sudden influx of new commanders as of late, over the last couple of weeks, getting those commanders integrated with the mysteries they have been approaching Canonn has been somewhat challenging over the last couple of weeks. But we're hoping in the next 2 to 4 weeks that we'll be having the very first of our workshops, which is it's somewhere where people can come and just listen, maybe ask questions if they are totally new to everything, just to get them orientated. If they want to, ask questions after maybe visiting the Codex after the fact. But it's something that should be starting, as I say, in the next 2 to 4 weeks.
So a little bit of a lecture series. That's good. Get everybody up to speed and ready to get out there. That's amazing.
I'm hoping it'll ease some of the newer pilots' transitions into the galaxy.
Anything to help get new commanders up and out of their sidewinders and getting into the deep science is very beneficial.
We do get asked an awful lot, I'm a new commander, what can I do? People seem to forget that simply wandering around the galaxy, checking out convoys, looking on mission boards, strolling around planets, they are all opportunities for new science.
Yes,
and you don't have to be a specialist. Anybody can do that.
Oh, yeah. We've all heard the tales of, I believe it was Bongo Baggins, strolling about in the deep black one day, finding the first free-floating UA, which was just out of the blue. One of the reasons I highly recommend everyone who goes exploring, take some cargo space. You never know what you're going to find.
Absolutely. It doesn't hurt to have a couple of cargo racks just ready to collect those goodies.
All right. So that about covers the Codex then. Now, the hot topic of the last 2 to 3 weeks now has been the mysterious, scary / unknown sites that have been found dotted around the Pleiades. I believe there's 207 now confirmed, and the final 208 is suspected to reside in the permit-locked HIP 22460 system. What can you guys tell us about that whole process and how everything has been going down over the last week or so? It's been really hectic, and trying to keep up with the rapid-fire pace of high-end math and laser pointers has been a little challenging.
Yes, I mean, from start to, and I can't say the words finished because we're nowhere near finished, but certainly from the start to the point where we are now, it's moved frighteningly fast. The ability for crowdsourcing science being proven once again by Canonn commanders and other factions and other communities coming together and resolving and finding out the background to these problems. It all started by finding some strange beacons, and the beacons were actually quite heavily protected, which was unusual. So it was no good popping there in your little sidewinder. That's when you need to do certainly work as a team and call in some heavy fire support. But these beacons gave us coordinates to planets, and the planets we found, what can we call them? I mean, they've been called all sorts of names. Recently heard them called a hatchery. They've been called crash ship, which I don't think really fits the description, given there are so many of them crash.
Leviathans.
World
engines.
World engines is another one. Yeah, thrusters, so they can move entire planets. Yeah, I think we've heard all sorts, and some very unusual tinfoil coming out the woodwork on that one.
World engines is a fairly frightening thought. If these things have the capability of moving an entire planet, we could be in for a rough year.
Well, they certainly have a dislike to certain forms of technology, and when that activates, they're certainly pummeling the core very hard with an extremely high energy beam. It's not a safe place to be in your SRV when that kicks off.
I have had the pleasure of witnessing this firsthand, and it is a rather startling occurrence when an alien machine just decides it wants to burn you to death.
When it starts screaming and wailing and pulsing
and banging.
Good grief. It was truly a frightening experience being in that room.
Now, what can you guys tell me about like the early discoveries there? I know it started out with a few disabled versions, possibly inactive. I'm not sure exactly what term we're going with this week. How did we get to the 5th and active, and from there the snowball that rolled downhill from there?
Well, with the with the sites themselves, the first, I think it was the first 4 or 5 sites were found via the listening posts and the unregistered comms beacons. Those were inactive sites. Well, sorry, 1 through 4 were inactive sites. These were called inactive sites because there's these portals on the sides of the structure which open out like petals to go into the structure when you have either an unknown artifact or unknown probe in your cargo hold in your SRV. Behind those doors, there were what looked like cave-ins, so we couldn't proceed further into the structure. That's why we're calling them inactive. The fifth site that was found, though, we're calling all sites like that active, because you can actually get fully inside the structure. And inside the structure there is what looks to be 3 plinths inside there. And with each plinth, there's what looks to be like an access port, where if you approach this access port, a hologram of what item should be placed onto this plinth via this cargo port, it will be represented in a hologram. You drop it in, and the plinth will suspend the item using some kind of anti gravity technology.
Yeah, I think it's also interesting just to take half a step back, because we've determined we have an inactive site and we determined we have an active site. We don't know which came first. We don't know if an inactive site is a new site that is still being constructed and therefore they haven't got to the middle, or if it's an old site and has been abandoned and is derelict. So we're not quite sure which way round that is at this moment in time. And the fifth one that you were asking, how was that found? I believe that was still through the listing post. But the rapid snowball comes from, as Starbeaver was saying there, if you put the right thing into the machine, as it basically is an organic machine, it will then show you a giant star map, and you hear audio. You pick up 3 audio signals. Now, when you collect the link from this map room, hatchery, engine, whatever it might be, and then take the link into orbit, so you've got a nice clean audio recording capability where there's no atmosphere and you just get the pure energy coming from the device, it actually gives you a message, and that message is encoded in octal, and you can decipher that message by reading the highs and low in octal, find the next location. So once it was discovered that we could actually pick up a key from each map room to the next destination, very, very quickly then people were spreading out in all directions to find these hundreds of sites.
All right. That sounds like it's a good initial explanation of that. And now I know there's some high-end math involved that goes way over my head, even as a spaceship pilot, but it eventually leads out that you play these messages back to the links, and then they guide us to the next one in the network, so to speak.
Effectively, yes. It's a network key, and once you get to the correct system with the network key, when you deploy the key, in space, it literally has a laser pointer, and you can follow that by eye quite easily to the next site, because these sites are truly huge. They are very visible from space.
I think they were estimated at between 10 and 15 kilometers across. They are quite large sites.
That is rather big. That puts me in mind of the large human cities that we have on the ground, the very circular, incredibly visible from space cities, and it's startling that these things could have possibly been out here for this long in such a well picked over portion of space and not been noticed.
Well, that's just it. How long they've actually been out here, nobody really knows. Have they been here all along? Have they been cloaked? Have they been covered? Were they just literally covered in beige and recently been uncovered by whatever put them there?
And that leads to some slightly frightening possibilities as my mind sits here and churns on that.
Yes. The power of these beings could be quite phenomenal.
Now, I have heard grumblings from a certain less public sector of the Canonn team. I don't know if either of you are at liberty or able to speak about the functionings of Lab 69, but what have you heard, if you can talk about anything coming out of there?
Yeah, that's a difficult one. What do you think, Starbeaver? I mean, technically, Lab 69, does it exist? Doesn't it exist? Is it just a ploy? Is it real?
Redacted?
Redacted could be a good way of describing it. Redacted, I think, might be the best way to describe Lab 69. We can neither confirm nor deny its existence, and at this time can't say a great deal more than that.
All right, fair enough. I don't want to, peel back too many of our secrets.
You might get a visit a little later from a gentleman with a large swad of paper and a pointy device that I wouldn't look at for too long. If I was you, I would just sign the paperwork.
You mean the one with the eel?
I'll Star, please. Too much detail.
All right, then. So this brings me on to speculations in tinfoil. There have been some rather shady characters popping up around the Pleiades. As you mentioned before, one of the comms relays was heavily defended by a previously unknown group of commanders, pilots possibly, who seem to have some association with federal forces. Do you have any comment on what could be going on there?
I think the key thing is they are trying to stand in the way of science, and science will prevail. It's no good sitting there in your ships believing that we will just go away and not bother investigating, because I'm afraid you'll be sadly mistaken.
Yes, it does appear, though, that this black flight, as it's been dubbed, has been responsible for putting the squish on some survey vessels. I believe the Pandora and Victoria's Song have been found adrift, crewless, and it's kind of shocking that 2 megaships worth of crew can just up and vanish into the black.
It certainly is a frightening prospect that these forces that are obviously clandestine in nature, that they should be held accountable for these people going missing.
Yes, we have seen reports of independent explorers going missing. I believe there was a recent article in the Maya Herald about a man named Luca who was supposed to be heading back to Obsidian Orbital for, a universal cartographics claim, who suddenly vanished after receiving a distress call.
Yeah, we've seen several of these reports, and we must remind all of our commanders, space is dangerous. It is worth taking a couple of pulse lasers. I know we've talked about cargo racks, but it doesn't hurt to be able to defend yourself and at least run away. You can always come back later with a few friends.
Indeed, I myself am known to go into the black heavily armed and armored, just on the off chance that something decides it wants to poke me. Now, on the more speculative side, what are the current things being kicked around? Like, what do we suspect these sites are, and what they might do?
One of the big tinfoils at the moment, and it's come from a couple of deep sources within the Pilots Federation. More than once, they've been called either a hatchery. I think there's another description. Star. What was the second one? It was hatchery and something else. Nursery, I think, was the other.
Nursery, that was it. Yes.
Yeah, I've seen 2 separate sources deep within the Pilots Federation use the term either hatchery or nursery. So the tinfoil is strong in that direction. Many people disagree, but we have not yet discovered its true purpose. So it could be a hatchery or it could be a world engine.
All right. Well, that begs the question: what is going to be hatching? Because we've seen the scavengers down there, and as the R&D team can attest, they aren't totally passive.
We did warn the R&D team not to poke them. It's all right picking one up and having a look, but when you start poking them, they start getting quite aggressive. They don't strike me as what's being hatched. They strike me more almost like a hive mind. If you imagine an ant colony where you have the worker drones and the nursery drone wandering around, keeping the place clean whilst the queen is born or the queen is taking care of the real soldiers. So I don't think it's the scavengers.
Well, in terms of a hatchery, when you the room off to the rooms which are off to the side where you can collect the unknown links from, they appear to be they drop out of what looks like a biological vending machine. So maybe they are hatching probes and artifacts, then launching them, possibly.
Biological vending machine. I love that. Excellent. Yeah, it could be. That's all that they are producing, Star. You could be quite right there. They're hatching the links, and the links are designed to show each one of these sites where they are. But then we've got to ask, why are they communicating with each other? Why don't they already know where they need to be?
Well, that is a good question, and it may explain where all of these probes and unknown artifacts have actually been coming from. If there are more sites like this that are dedicated to organically vending more than one type of these unknown things, where are the rest of them?
Certainly, and it's also worth mentioning that around these sites, inside these sites, we're finding all sorts of materials that are unfamiliar to us. Unknown resin certainly seems like a very interesting material. What its properties are and what we'll be able to do with that in the future, we don't know.
Biological circuitry is another one. But then again, there are also the familiar materials which we do find around the sites, which we find at barnacles, such as metalloys, for example, where they are meta-alloy spikes around each site, as well as the other smaller spikes which just give elemental materials.
It is interesting to mention that we know that the center of this thing is capable of generating immense amounts of power. So we have power, we have resin, we have meta-alloys, materials, metals, and we have organic circuitry. We have everything you need to build a living ship.
It certainly appears that way.
Now, has anything been done as far as claiming any of these sites? Like, has any particular group decided they want to take hold of
I
the
don't think we've
wonders?
seen any Federation or Imperial cruisers yet over these sites. The Federation cruiser over the top of Professor Paling at the moment seems to be a lot more active. So actively patrolling the area and keeping an eye on things. Things are definitely hotting up out there between the big powers. As for the smaller groups, no. I mean, certainly from a science point of view, we've no interest in claiming anything. Science is open to all.
We just like to go down there, have a good nose around, and record everything that we can to report back to the wider community.
It's a very admirable goal, and something I'm sure a lot of commanders in the galaxy very much appreciate. Let's see. What else do we have here on the agenda this evening? Well, like I said, we had wanted to have the R&D guys here, but they are indisposed. So, any other speculations, possible tinfoil you guys would like to get out there before we move on to the next topic?
I think a bit of a more of a firming up of some facts, actually. We obviously have the Gnosis out in Variety at the moment. She's still being fitted for deep space exploration and fitted for everything that a commander's going to need remotely, hopefully from the edges of the bubble. What we can't reveal yet is where it will go first. We can't reveal its exact jump range and capabilities. That has to be tested still. It should be in the region, we believe, of 2,500 light years, so it'll be able to make a megaship jump, but it will only actually be able to do this once every 7 days. It'll take that long to refuel it in between time. It might not move every 7 days. It might only move once, stay for 2 or 3 weeks in a single location, and then move again. We can confirm that if you were aboard the Gnosis when it jumps, you will be at the new destination and when it arrives. So if you fancy hitching a ride aboard the Gnosis, you certainly can. And where the first jump will be, honestly, we don't know yet. And we're still quite a few weeks away, I believe, before we'll be making those first jumps.
All right. Well, that about covers the next topic then, which was the first jump possibilities of the Gnosis. Now, do you have anywhere in particular you guys are at liberty to discuss as to where you would like to send it?
I don't think I'd like to send it to Mirope. I think that could be quite a hot area. There's certainly superpowers are over there rattling sabers, but Ramtar's ruins and the ancient ruins, I think there's still an awful lot of work to be done down there, so it could end up going in that direction.
Well, given the recent events and the reaction again of the unknown sites to the Guardians relics in particular, when we tested that, I do think that the Guardians definitely needs to be revisited.
Yeah, we also found a ship out there quite recently, I believe, Starbeaver.
Yes, was it Professor Melville's ship was recently found out that way.
Correct. The SETI, I believe, if I'm pronouncing that right.
Yeah, the SETI or the CT, it depends on your pronunciation. Brigane, yet another ship, unfortunately, where all hands seem to have been lost. A little bit of space madness by the sounds of it.
Always a possibility when you're far away from a good biscuit.
Definitely. And, that's a lesson to be learned, to keep sure you're stocked high with biscuits and whiskey. And if you happen to come across Commander Nick Powell, he will have plenty of gin on board. That's his favourite tipple.
All right. So while we're on the topic of the Guardians, let's aim at that for a little bit here. It has been suspected that we don't have all of their sites discovered yet. There are certainly a lot of those to begin with. And it appears they increase in number as you approach the Regor locked sector. Do we think we'll find any survivors once we can actually get into that area of space after, appropriate bribes have been paid to the Pilots Federation?
I do believe that will be possible, but I think that the key to that could quite possibly be finding more of these Guardian sites. I mean, as you said, there are numerous sites around the Regor sector, but what isn't widely known is that there are a couple of ruined sites out towards Colonia at the back end of the Conflux region, and there's also some sites out towards the Eta Carina region, which are completely at the opposite ends of the galactic map.
Yeah, they've certainly had a very wide influence, sphere of influence, and I don't think we found even a small percentage of their sites yet. I urge commanders to keep looking in those areas, see what we can find, certainly map out as many of them as we can.
Now, this brings me to the possibility of us running into these aliens out in space, and from looking through their entries that Ramtah has been able to decode, it appears there were at least two factions. One that was very heavily into cyborg modifications and AI integration, and another fairly stifled religious sect that rose up later on in their history who said no to all of that and pushed them out of their home territory. Do we have any indication that they might ever return? Are these far-flung sites belonging to the Exiles, to their early ARC projects? Any comment there?
I think we're a long way from having any answers to that question. There's an awful lot more research to be done. I mean, these sites do seem still to have some level of power and activity. I would strongly advise, though, if somebody does happen to turn up, don't shoot first. It's never a good idea to shoot first.
Wise words. Well, we're nearing the end of our time here. Did either of you have anything else you'd like to add before we wrap this up?
No, you not got anything there, Commander Starbeaver?
No, I don't have anything, Commander Del.
I think there's a couple of more bits and pieces we're working on in the background for some of our newer commanders. I do believe that, very sorry, Starbeaver, I never pronounced this correctly. Commander Jeremiah is working on a cheat sheet.
Oh, Jeramuth.
Yes,
Jeramuth, Commander Jeramuth.
Yeah, we're trying to put together a bit of a cheat sheet. So sometimes new commanders get lost in some of the lingo. And for example, sometimes I'm called Delspan, and that's because Commander Lady Outspan flies with me constantly, and we're often on the mic at the same time. So it's much easier to say Delspan talking to both of us than it is to one of us. And many other abbreviation. Ark's leg, for example, means Arcannon's legacy out in Colonia, and she's putting all this down in record, and that will be pushed out to ships around the galaxy that they can make use of.
Well, that would be incredibly useful, because we do certainly have a lot of jargon.
There is a lot of jargon in science, and anything that we can do to make it clearer, we'll do our damnedest.
All right, then. So if there's nothing else, I'd like to thank you both very much for joining me this evening. I know you guys are on Verati time, and it is getting late. So for Commander Delmonte and Commander Starbeaver of the Canonn Council, thank you for joining us this evening, and fly safe, everyone.
Thank you very much for having us.
Cheers.
Commanders.
Canonn Radio, solving the galaxy's mysteries one biscuit at a time. I'd like to now welcome Commander DMehaffy to the show, the head of Canonn's R&D department, to discuss some of the projects they've been working on. Commander DMehaffy, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here.
Now, Commander, as the head of the Canonn Research and Development team, what is it that you're responsible for?
Well, sometimes that's difficult to say. Quite honestly, I'm the systems and network manager, but in my free time, I'm managing our documentation and helping out with any of the other projects that need attention.
All right, that sounds straightforward enough. What kinds of projects do you have in the pipeline, and what is there that is available for the general public to get their hands on? Those that you're free to discuss, of course.
Well, we have quite a few things in the works. There are a few that still need some additional research done first, and of course our team has very strict non-disclosure agreements, but specifically what we can talk about is the new 3D maps. We have quite a few scientists working on significant advances in our 3D mapping technology. One of our most recent examples was on the unknown structures, codenamed the Thargoid sites. Our statistical analysis and mapping of those sites was quite well received across the galactic scientific community, and due to the success of that project, we're developing a means to use that technology across all of Canonn's scientific missions, past, present, and future.
I am familiar with the 3D map, an ambitious and useful tool for helping to visualize just how many and how densely packed these sites are within the Pleiades. What other projects have you been working on? I know early on in the R&D team's founding, something similar was done with the Guardian sites.
The Guardian sites is, of course, next on our list in terms of major overhaul. We started working on some major improvements to how we handle that data that's being gathered, as well as some visual improvements to the tool itself. While it seems, after speaking with the engineer known as Ramtah and his near limitless pocketbook, the mission related to those ruins is here to stay for at least a while longer, and due to this, we've been working closely with some other commanders to help redesign and include some additional features into the project that we've codenamed Bifrost. used. Specifically, we are looking to optimize the way the data is gathered and submitted to Canonn for review by our researchers, and of course all of this data still needs to be verified.
So I take it then the work you've been doing so far on that front has been well received by the community at large? Have you had any stumbling blocks you've had to overcome when working with Ramta, as I'm told he can be somewhat eccentric?
Oh yes, I've had some great feedback in regards to our tool. I do have to say it was based off a few other commanders' work that we've kind of all pulled into one. We have a near constant stream of suggestions and improvements, and we're always looking at options. Ramta is quite an interesting fellow to work with. He usually has quite a lot to say, but is sometimes hard to follow. I do have a few commanders I wish to name and give proper credits to, of course. Commander Maz CH, he was the original developer for the interactive map that Bifrost was largely based upon. Commander Admiral Adama for his exceptional work on the front-end development of the tool, and for putting up with Commander Zeb Army's crazy requests for change and improvement. Commander Nophilios, he's done some brilliant work on supporting the framework development for this and many of our future tools. And of course, the entire team of data collection specialists, both within Canonn and from the broader galactic scientific community. Without those efforts, we would not have populated Bifrost databanks to the exhaustive degree that we have.
Now, I've heard through the shipboard's comms that you've recently managed to acquire one of the scavengers from an unknown site that you've taken back to study on the Gnosis, and that has been a bit tough going trying to squeeze the secrets of its functioning out of it without killing it. Would you care to comment on anything on that front, or am I drifting too far into NDA territory with that question?
Well, we've begun some fairly early research on the specimen you speak of. I can't release too many details, but specifically one thing we have noticed is it really does not care much for the Guardian artifacts. Just the other day we were performing an experiment on the subject at an ancient relic retrieved from one of those sites. To say simply, it caused quite a stir in the labs aboard the Gnosis, and we actually had to place the entire area in a lockdown for about 6 hours.
That certainly sounds interesting. I'm guessing, though, that since we're having this conversation, the new meta-alloy-infused clean suits held up under the sometimes caustic excretions of the creature. Now, we're coming up against our time wall here, so do you have anything else that you'd like to go over before we wrap up this segment?
We have had some difficulty containing the specimen, yes. I feel we've come to the point where it can be safely contained and studied for now. Naturally, of course, we do have many projects in the works. Specifically, I wanted to reach out to all of the commanders listening that Canonn Research and Development is always looking for the best and brightest out there. If you feel you have talents that aren't being put to use, I urge you to please contact us. Specifically, we have a position open for software for use on the popular personal information devices being used out there in the field. If you have any development experience on these mobile platforms, I would love to speak with you one-on-one.
All right, good to know there. We'll do our best to get that request out to the community at large. I'd like to personally thank you, and on behalf of Canonn and the interested community at large, for the great work the R&D team have been putting in the effort to make all the numerous and altogether confusing bits of data that have been trickling in over the last few months put together into a much more user-friendly and accessible format.
There has been quite a bit of confusing information floating around. I would expect Canonn Research and Development to be around for quite some time. Also, thank you very much for having me, Cmdr Larzok, and thank you again to all of the researchers out there providing us with data. We couldn't do it without you. Now, if you don't mind, I actually have just been made aware that we're having some reactor issues on the Gnosis that I really must attend to.
Of course. Thank you again, Cmdr DMehaffy, everyone, manager of the Canonn R&D department, and that about wraps it up for this episode. Thank you all for listening. I'm Cmdr Larzok, signing off. Canonn Radio. We wear tinfoil so you don't have to.
Greetings, pilots. This is Commander Artemis Tau. Canonn Media, that is Canonn Faction News and Canonn Radio, I would like to thank all of our subscribers and Twitter followers. It is thanks to you that the word is spreading out and we are able to inform and educate more pilots out there in the galaxy. As for the commanders seen here that go above and beyond the call, I would like to thank our Patreons, producers, and affiliates. Without you, none of the content you have seen in the last month would exist. Thank you very much. If you like what we do and want to help us along, check out our Patreon. If you want to stay up to date, check out our Twitter and subscribe to our YouTube. Click the bell icon to get updates. Also, check out the new and improved Canonn website, which contains tools, information, and the newly released codex that will answer almost every question of the mysteries of our galaxy. Almost. From all of us at CFN, good night, good luck, and fly safe.